EFL League One just got a whole lot more interesting in the playoff race. The automatic promotion race is this close to being done as Derby County look to seal that promotion to the Sky Bet Championship. But shall we take a look into this weekend's fixtures that have just gone on? It's been a very, very interesting weekend, and there's some big teams who could be falling out of that playoff race. So let's take a look at the league table, and we're not going to look into Pompey's game in any sort of detail, but they did fall to defeat at Wigan Athletic. Now, whatever happened in that game didn't really matter, doesn't matter. Whatever happens in their next game doesn't matter. Their season is done. They're up. They're champions, and they can go home absolutely buzzing. Derby County won 1-0 at Cambridge. Very, very edgy and interesting game, let's say. Cambridge didn't seem like a team near relegation. Derby sort of defended really well in the second half. We'll get into all the numbers, formation, statistics and all of that in a moment. Bolton Wanderers and Peterborough both won their games. Barnsley fell to a fourth defeat in 5 games. I said it at the weekend. I said it a few days ago. I think Barnsley could fall out of this playoff race. Lincoln City have now got themselves into the playoff places after they won. Oxford United drew versus Stevenage on Friday night. Blackpool picked up another important victory against none other than Barnsley. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look into each and every fixture that I've just mentioned, and we'll see how this league table is going to shape up at the end of the next week, at the end of the season. There is just 2 games to go for some teams, 1 game for others. Let's get into the first fixture. But before we get into the other fixtures, it's time to say goodbye to Port Vale and Fleetwood Town. Despite Fleetwood winning, Burton Albion also won, so that means Fleetwood are relegated. Port Vale, 4 losses in their previous 5 games. They lost as well, and that is them out of the chance of staying up. Cheltenham Town still have an outside chance, but they did lose, and they are 5 points away from Burton. They need to win both games with Burton losing, and they face Cheltenham Town in midweek, and I just can't see them winning that game. Well, so here we have Oxford United versus Stevenage. They played on Friday night, 8 o'clock on Sky TV, and despite Steve Evans leaving not days before this game, Stevenage was still very much in the Steve Evans mould. The guy who's taken over very much keeping in line with that hard-to-play physical mentality that has been installed at Stevenage. Oxford United really could have won this game. They had plenty of opportunities. They were all over Stevenage for a majority of the game. They did end up getting back in the game through a Cameron Brannigan penalty after 60 minutes, but realistically, they just couldn't create enough and take it, and that was the big problem that we saw with Oxford United. Now, it's just one of those. Oxford United have now put themselves in a position where it's not in their hands for the playoffs. They still have every opportunity to get in the playoffs, and we cannot forget that. Now, if we just look at both teams now, I really like some of the players in this Oxford United side. I like Murphy, I like Rodriguez, Brannigan, Harris, some very good players in that team. And Stevenage have quite a few good players as well. You've got Piergiani. I think he's really good. I think he can do really well in League One. Harvey White, now, he was at Derby last season, didn't quite break through, and I don't really think Stevenage is the right fit for him, but he's a player who I quite like. Obviously, Jamie Reid up front has shown what he's capable of doing. But this result essentially took Oxford United out of their hands, essentially. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next, in the next game, because that's going to seal the deal for this playoff race. And there's a point in it between 5th and 7th. There's only 2 points between 5th and 8th. And realistically, I feel like Barnsley are going to be the ones that are going to drop out on the final day, but we'll get into that in just a moment. Obviously, both teams utilise their substitutes list. And if we look at the momentum chart, you can see Stevenage never really gained real momentum in the game. They had moments, they had spells on the ball, which you can expect through a 90-minute period. That is just what is going to happen. But Oxford United were, in my opinion, by far the better team. From watching it on telly, in my opinion, I think they were by far the better team. Just very unlucky not to be able to put their chances away. And we'll get into the numbers in a minute, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if they were much higher on XG, much higher on shots and things like that. But obviously, Stevenage still create their own opportunities despite not having the momentum, and that is what they're good at. So if we now scroll down and take a look at the statistics, and look, exactly as I mentioned, much more possession for Oxford United, more shots, more chances created, more expected goals. Stevenage's goal was an own goal, and apart from that, they created 0.09 XG, which for me just isn't good enough, especially for a team that's battling for the playoff place as it was in this game. They'd have to have won both games. So you can see they've kept that Steve Evans mould after his move back to Rotherham, but they just were unable to get the final deal. But Oxford United, very, very impressive performance, but they'll be devastated not to come away with 3 points, because all them shots in the box, like I've said it fucking numerous times over the past few weeks, you can't have that many shots in the box and not start putting them away. And I'm not saying that Stevenage didn't defend well and get loads of blocks off, but you've got to do better when you're in the box, and that's just the way I see it. Only 6 shots on target from 25 shots. Like, for me, I don't think that's good enough. I think you should have at least 9, maybe 10. But I know getting the ball in the back of the net is one of the hardest things to do in football, especially at the professional level. So this is where it leaves it with Oxford United and Stevenage. Oxford United, 7th place at the moment on 74 points. Level with Lincoln City, 1 point behind Barnsley. Let's get into the next game. If you have not done so already and you are enjoying this type of League One content, make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay tuned for all my latest content heading into the final few weeks of the season and looking into next season for potentially the Sky Bet Championship, depending on what happens with Derby County. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and let me know your thoughts of this League One weekend down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. The next game was another one between two playoff hopefuls as Blackpool faced Barnsley at Bloomfield Road. Now, Blackpool, what an amazing performance for them. They were 3-0 up within 47 minutes. They had, I tell you something, Bloomfield Road, I can imagine it was absolutely bouncing. Karamako Dembele, another unbelievable performance from him, collecting 2 assists in the first half. And Barnsley just didn't really show up until the second half, and they came into it late on with goals from McAtee and Phillips, but they just didn't have the opportunity to get fully back into the game, and that has to be a credit to Blackpool. Now, I know it ended 3-2, so Blackpool may come away from this a bit disappointed with the 2 goals conceded, but I think they should be delighted. Obviously, Karamako Dembele, another man of the match performance for him. Sonny Carey, Coulson and Husband picking up the goals. Dembele, both assists. Hamilton, Beasley, Byers, all putting in some really, really good performances. Obviously, you look at Barnsley, and that is not a bad side. I don't know what has happened to them over the past few months. They played Derby not that long ago. My match review will probably be on my page somewhere if you want to go and take a look at that. And at that point, I was sort of probably scared of them in the automatic promotion race, because they were like 3 points behind us with like a game or 2 games in hand, and I really thought that they were going to hit some form and keep going. But just like Peterborough, just like Bolton, they slumped after our game, and that's what's put us in our position in 89 points after 45 games. Now, if we continue talking about this game, obviously loads of changes used to keep the players fresh. Match momentum, it's sort of one of those where it's sort of 50-50 in my opinion. Blackpool obviously got their goals and then sort of gave Barnsley the ball and sat on their lead, which I think it happens a lot in this league. Derby County do it a lot. We'll get into that when we talk about Derby versus Cambridge, because that was a very, very interesting game. But it's like, you get your goals, you sit in, you close out the result, and that's what Blackpool did in the end. And if we look down here, you'll see, obviously, if we split it between first and second half, like, look at the first half, it's all Blackpool. Second half, all Barnsley. So, like, it's just one of those things where Barnsley sort of shut up shop in the second half, and they're more than welcome to do that. At the end of the day, they got the 3rd goal early in the second half and then just let Barnsley do whatever they needed to do. 1.43 XG to 0.71, 19 shots to 11. Like, look here, 7 shots on target from 19. I'd probably expect 7 or 8, like, for Blackpool. but decent for them. They got the result they needed. Obviously, Barnsley, 5 shots on target from 11, missed 2 big chances, which is never good enough when you're battling for a playoff place. But Barnsley are now on 75 points. Blackpool are 2 points behind on 73. You've got Lincoln and Oxford in between. Like, this final day is going to be very, very interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if these games get put on Sky. I know Derby and Carlisle has, but I'm not sure about any others. Obviously, Derby can seal automatic promotion, but this playoff race is, like, it's so close. Like, I think there's 3-4 teams that could end up in the playoffs, depending on results. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that finishes. So now we'll get on to the next game. Well, a big one for relegation and for the playoffs, really. Cheltenham Town, obviously, battling really hard to try and not lose, not go down. And unfortunately, they did fall to a 2-1 defeat against Lincoln City. They were at home, so they'll be. I think they'll be a bit disappointed, although you can't really be disappointed about losing to Lincoln, considering their form over the second half of the season. Joe Taylor and Freddie Draper picking up the goals. Liam Seracom picking up the goal for Cheltenham Town. And for me, it's the result that I expected and anticipated, really, because we all know how good Lincoln City have been recently. They've been absolutely incredible. Obviously, they dropped a few points recently, but that's just one of those things. Obviously, Cheltenham Town have the likes of Curtis Davis, Seracom. Like, they do have some good players in their 11, but they're just not quite at this level, in my opinion. Like, I'm not saying they're not a good team or that there's no chance they could ever stay in League One with the squad of players that they've got, because there is, but they've been unlucky, and it's the start to the season for them that has really put them on the back burner. I think they had 1 point after 8 or 9 games, and at that point, I think they were like 4 or 5 points away from safety anyway. And if you look at where they are in the league table, I think they're 5 points away now. If they'd have just picked up 2 points in those opening 8-9 games, 2-3 points in those opening 8-9 games, they'd be 2 points away with 2 games in hand. So it's just one of those things. Obviously, Lincoln City, they've been excellent recently. You can't really be disappointed about losing to them, in my opinion. Derby's draw with them earlier in the year seems absolutely brilliant now, considering the form they've been on, some of the teams they've beaten. Obviously, Joe Taylor that day could have had a bag full. Like, he was really impressive getting in behind. He got the better of Erin Cashin that day and should have really had a hat-trick. So obviously Lucas Jensen has been in impressive form for them as well. I believe he's joined with Joe Wildsmith for clean sheets this season. Obviously, substitutes bench at this point of the season is pivotal. Obviously, you're coming to the back end now, and it always seems to be that you get to the end of the season and those players that have been injured seem to not care anymore, so they get themselves available. And if we look at the match momentum chart, it's not as if Lincoln City were dominant in this game. It was a very evenly shared game. Both teams had a bit of momentum, had their own spells, but Lincoln City made the most of theirs. And that is the most important part. Obviously, looking at the stats, it's not that Cheltenham didn't have opportunities, because they did, but Lincoln City just had more. And 1.90 XG to 1.18. I believe, did they have a penalty? Yeah, I think they had a penalty. Let me just check. I'm sure they had a penalty. No, they didn't have a penalty. So, like, that XG is really good for Lincoln City. 1.18 for Cheltenham Town. Not bad, but not great. It's just one of those things. Cheltenham Town, you can see why they're where they are in the league, and it's just one of those things. But Lincoln City, buzzing. They're in 6th place right now on 74 points, level with Oxford, 1 point behind Barnsley. And I think there's a world, I think I've said this a couple of times over the past few weeks. I really think there's a world where Lincoln City, Oxford, or Lincoln City, Blackpool, Oxford, Blackpool, I think there's a world where Barnsley don't get in the playoffs, and that's going to be really, really disappointing for a team that, after they played Derby, believed they were challenging for automatic promotion. And their recent form at Barnsley has been absolutely horrendous. I don't know what's gone off. I don't know what's changed. I'd love to hear from any Barnsley fans that watch this. Let me know down in the comments what's happened at Barnsley. Obviously, I know we're talking about Lincoln City right now, but what's happened at Barnsley affects Lincoln, because Barnsley have just dropped off the boil. I think they've picked up 2 wins since that game against Derby, and I don't know what has happened. Like, they've just really fell off. So we'll get into the next game now, because that playoff race is mega, mega interesting. So Peterborough United keep themselves in the hunt for that automatic promotion place just. Now, they need to win and need Derby to lose on the final day. They need a 9-goal difference swing, whether that be 5-0 Peterborough, like 5-0 Peterborough, then a 4-0 Derby loss, or like whatever. They've got 2 games to close up 9 goals. And to be honest with you, I think Peterborough have sort of they're setting themselves up for the playoffs. If they get automatic promotion, I think they'll be buzzing, but I think it's highly, highly unlikely. They've got to win the next 2 games, as we know. They play Cheltenham in midweek, which is obviously a winnable game, but then they've got Bolton Wanderers on the final day, which is going to be very interesting to look into. We're going to take a look into this 2-0 result with Joel Randall and Jones scoring. You can tell by the lineup, they made a few changes. Mothersill starting in the league. I don't know if he's done that many times this season. Obviously, I know he's been on the bench a lot. He has played minutes. Johnson Clark Harris starting. Like, that front 3 is normally Mason Clark, Jake Jones. Like, they have Poku. They have a set sort of front 3 that you usually use. Obviously, Randall, Collins, Kiprianu, sort of their normal midfield 3. Obviously, I was going through that owner, Darren McAntony's Twitter, and their right back is one of those players who they think is going to break through over the next season or so, and he seemed to have a really good game for them. If you're a Posh fan, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Like, from what I've seen, I thought he looked quite impressive. Obviously, Burrows again picking up an assist, but who else would pick up an assist for Peterborough? Like, Burrows has had a very, very good season. Don't get me wrong, very deserving of his Player of the Year award. Do I think he should have got it? Probably not, but obviously is putting some incredible numbers for Peterborough this season. So I do think, though, if he hadn't won the EFL trophy, I don't think he would have got it. But hey-ho. Obviously, Bristol Rovers without their pivotal striker, Chris Martin, for 4 games. I believe it was a headbutt. I've not seen the clip, so you'll have to let me know. Is it deserved? Is it not? I think he's got a 4-game suspension from the FA. But they're done anyway, so they've not really got much to worry about. But it is going to trouble the start of their next season, obviously not being able to use him for 2 games, I think it'll be. Obviously, Jade Jones, Mason Clark came on. Obviously, Ricky Jade Jones scoring. What else? Well, obviously, as you can tell, Peterborough, obviously, the more dominant team in this game. Peterborough are just one of those teams that can dominate anybody. They can control possession against anybody. And to be honest with you, they're very good at what they do. And although they're not quite battling for automatic promotion, I know they are, but they're not quite. Like, the 6-point gap, they need 6 points. They need a proper goal swing, and they need Derby to lose in order. Well, yeah, they need Derby to lose in order to get automatic promotion, which it's not that I can't see Derby losing. I'm more thinking that Bolton and Peterborough on the final day is going to be like a dead rubber. I think they're both going to attack each other, and I don't really know how it's going to end up. But Peterborough are one of those sides that can do anything against anybody. And as you can see, 60% to 40%, 2 goals from 5 shots on target. Can't really complain from that. 1.55 XG to 0.28. Defending well, creating lots of chances. Can't ask for more from your Peterborough side, really. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments, Peterborough fans. Are you still thinking about automatic promotion, or are you sort of hoping to set up for the playoffs? And Bolton Wanderers also keep themselves just in the hunt for automatic promotion. Obviously, sitting 3 points behind Derby County as it stands. It's a 4-goal swing needed because they have more goals scored than Derby. But they picked up another 2 in this game. Collins and Jerome picking up the goals. Collins has been in some impressive form over recent weeks. I think he's now 9 in like 11 or 9 in 12, something along those lines. But he's been really, really good. Cameron Jerome's picked up 2 in 2 now. He scored in midweek against Shrewsbury. And obviously, you look at this Bolton Wanderers side, and Obviously, this game relegated Port Vale, and it's disappointing for Port Vale. It's disappointing for Darren Moore, but they'll build well for League Two next season. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're up there challenging for automatic promotion in League Two next year. They've got some really good players in that team. If they can keep the likes of Ikpazu, Ojo, Walters, Ripley, then I don't think they'll have much problem in League Two. Obviously, they've got to build up their squad as well, but we'll see how that happens. And obviously, you look at this Bolton Wanderers side, they do have some really, really good players. Dion Charles, Aaron Collins, Thomas and Sheenan, Magoma from Brentford, obviously. So they've got some really good players in this team, and the slumps they've been through this year, which realistically let Derby get back into the automatic promotion race, just hasn't been good enough. Baxter, obviously, the injuries they faced have obviously affected them this season, but everyone's had injuries. Derby County at one point had no right backs. Derby County at one point had only one central midfielder fit, only one winger fit. At one point they had no strikers fit. It's like all teams have gone through these injury phases, and some teams have dealt with it a lot better than others, which in my opinion shows either a difference in squad mentality or a difference in squad ability. Now at Derby, I think it's all about mentality, knowing your jobs. But at Bolton, I don't really know. If you're a Bolton Wanderers fan, let me know down in the comments. Obviously, there's still an outside chance you get automatic promotion, but it is very much an outside chance. Let me know if you think you're going to get it down in the comments. But obviously, Cameron Jerome off the bench, score, and pure dominance, really, from Bolton Wanderers. Port Vale having moments, but never really in the game, and that's just like consistent with Bolton throughout a lot of their games really this season. They're very good on the ball. They're definitely not in the Paul Warne mould, let's just put it that way, because Paul Warne at Derby County doesn't mind relinquishing possession, giving the other team the ball so that it drags them out to create opportunities. Bolton just like to create those chances themselves, and this most match momentum chart shows that. And if we go down to the possession, and I think it shows, but they do give up chances. They gave up 9 shots, 3 on target, 0.68 XG in just 28% possession, which, don't get me wrong, if Port Vale take one of those, they probably would end up coming away from this game with a draw, because obviously Jerome scored late on, and when you've got something to hold on to in those final minutes, you defend a lot differently, in my opinion. But obviously Bolton Wanderers, 72% possession, 2.10 XG, 27 shots, 7 shots on target, 4 big chances. Now, they missed 3 big chances, and it's going to be very difficult for Bolton to pick up the points and goals they need against Posh on the final day. And I think, realistically, it's not impossible. We saw it with Bristol Rovers when they got that 7-goal swing on the final day. But are Bolton going to be able to do it? I'm not 100% sure. I think they have an opportunity to. Do I think Posh can concede goals? Yes. They conceded 5 to Oxford United a few weeks ago. Do I think Bolton can concede goals? Yes. Do I think Posh can score goals? Yes. It's just an ongoing circle of both teams are capable of pulling results out of the bag. So it's going to be interesting to see how that game is handled from both teams, because Posh could put out a lower side to try and get Derby dropped into the playoffs, or they could try and get third. So it's going to be interesting to see how it's handled. So shall we get into the final game, Derby County's game at Cambridge? So Derby County went to Cambridge and they had a clear game plan. Like it was brutally obvious what Derby County were planning on doing. It was get a goal, sit, get a goal, defend, get a goal, defend. Like that was the aim. It was just sit in, get your result, get what you need, and then go home, run, sprint away. And at the Abbey Stadium, like it's really, really difficult to sort of see past what Derby did. Now, they relinquished a lot of possession, especially in the second half, and they gave up a lot of chances for Cambridge. And we'll get into the numbers. And I was watching the game, and it was was one of those where your heart's beating out your chest because you know how important the result is. And the goal, we missed so many chances before Mendes Lang finally rounded the keeper and scored, and he hit the crossbar a couple of minutes before. I think Sibley had missed a chance, Collins had missed a chance. It just felt like it was going to be one of those days where you're just never going to get the rub of the green. And if we look at the side, obviously no changes for Derby. Why would you make changes after a 3-0 win? Obviously, it's Derby's first goal in open play since the Portsmouth game, which was like 3 or 4 games ago. It's the first goal for a forward since Dwight Gale against Reading. And don't get me wrong, this Cambridge side have some really good players in the team. Macaulay Bonne, Gassana Hadme, Gibbons I think is quite good, Bennett and Rossi at the back. They were really good yesterday, but you can't put past Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, Louis Sibley, another excellent performance at left wing back. For a number 10 playing out of position, he's been brilliant this season. I've said it a few times since I've started making my videos, and I really do think that Louis Sibley could be the future at left back, even if we go into the Championship, because he's really learned some defensive nous over the past few months, and whether that's down to Craig Forsyth, Cashin, Paul Warne, he's just really learned how to calm himself down and just keep going, and he's done brilliant. And obviously there was some really impressive blocks in that first half from Wildsmith and Bradley, Cashin as well. Ibu Adams in the second half chucking himself in front of a bicycle kick from Lyle Taylor and getting booted in the head. But Max Bird returned in this game for Derby County, and I've got a full match review out on my channel. If you haven't already watched that, make sure you go and check that out, because I go into mega detail about what I think is going to happen on the final day and how I'm feeling about it, because it's one of those where, if you look here, Derby in the first half sort of controlled it, got their goal, and then second half just sort of did nothing, sat in, and we'll look at the numbers. But obviously it looks 50-50. Obviously Derby County creating the much better chances. Mendez-Lang's goal from the edge of the box, although the keeper was out, it was a good, calm finish. Like, it's one of those where he goes around the keeper and you're like, oh, he's going to miss, because it's been one of those days. But he put the opportunity away. And if we just split the first half and second half, look, Derby had 60-40, 1.29 XG in the first half. And if we go to the second half, it is all Cambridge. 59% possession to 41%. Obviously, Paul Warne knew Cambridge struggle with scoring goals. There's a reason that they're down at the bottom of the league where they are. But Derby County, excellent performance. And now, Cambridge are in a position where they could fall into the relegation zone on the final day. Very unlikely, because Cheltenham have to win both games, but it is a possibility. So keep your eyes tuned on that relegation battle. Keep your eyes tuned on the playoff race, because it's very, very difficult to see what's going to happen. Obviously, the automatic promotion race is going down to the wire. I said it, that I didn't want it to happen, but I knew it was going to happen. We're going in the best possible position that we could. We're 3 points up. We have to lose in order for other teams to get above us. And we're at home, and that's the important thing. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments of this game week in League One. Obviously, it's very interesting to see what's gone off this week, especially with the likes of Barnsley, how close Blackpool and Lincoln City and Oxford are. So that's going to be an interesting playoff race, and I'll make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay tuned. We'll have match previews out for the midweek games, which is Peterborough and Cheltenham, and I think there's another one as well. So we'll do a preview for that, just to see what's going off, and stay tuned with all the results. So make sure you have hit that subscribe button. Let me know your thoughts of this League One weekend down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.